3PNR with Adam R. Welcome to 3PNR. I'm your host, Adam R. And joining me again, Mindy Tautfest from MUFON. Mindy, how you doing?
Doing good. Thanks, Adam.
Good. I started watching The Mandalorian on suggestions of friends, and Rogu's goddamn adorable. Have you watched that show?
I have not. We've actually cut back on all of our cable and everything, and we're down to just Netflix. So I'm behind on a lot of these things.
Netflix is doing amazing. I mean, it used to be you had okay movies and shows. Now, I mean, it's a home run. They're the new deal. Yeah.
Well, and it's so cheap.
Yeah, that too. Yeah. Well, look, when you get the opportunity, you get on Disney Plus, watch The Mandalorian. I was really hesitant because I'm a Star Wars fan from the old Star Wars movies, right? I wasn't really a big fan of the new things. And a friend of mine talked me into it. So I started watching it. And this little Yoda thing, Rogu, it's adorable. And then you're glued. And before you know it, you're absolutely stuck into the story. And I'm not going to blow it, but I could say at the end of it all, it was a good show. I suggest it highly.
Yeah, I've seen the little Yoda guy, and he's just adorable. You're right. That's one that I would be interested in seeing. And then also, I've never seen Game of Thrones either, and that's another one that.
Yeah, you got to watch that. That's one of those shows you get involved with, and you get enraged. Like, come on, man! You can't wait for the outcomes.
Yeah. That's on my list as well.
So here's this thing going around. I talked to Doug Wilson again. I've spoken to a lot of people. I'm still baffled by this, but did you know that a large percentage in the United States, Americans don't believe UFOs are real?
That blows my mind. And, I really think that'll be changing soon. I've got kids, 13 and 15 now, and their generation, they're different. They don't care. they have the audacity, honestly, that they don't care about differences. They don't care about all the hangups that like previous generations have had in society. They just want to get on with life, and they want to love life and love each other. And I'll talk to my kids obviously all the time about UFOs, and I've asked them, have you talked to your friends about what they think about aliens and UFOs? And they pretty much say all their friends believe in them. And I think that it's getting to the point where, as a society, it's almost ridiculous to still deny that there could be something out there. As much as we know about space, as much as we know about how much is really out there, it's becoming increasingly hard to subscribe to the idea that we are the only intelligence around.
Yeah, I agree. Especially I remember watching a documentary, and they were discussing the vastness of space and then our universe, and that we're just potentially a bubble amongst many universes. And then I try to think, well, what is all that inside? My head almost exploded. And I felt small, like I felt irrelevant for the whole remainder of the night. I was like depressed. I was like, wow, there's so much. There's undoubtedly something living elsewhere. I mean, undoubtedly. Probably the majority out there. Keep in mind, we have SETI, and SETI's trying to, detect radio waves from somewhere else. Meanwhile, it takes like 100,000 years for a radio wave to cross the vastness of even our galaxy. How do we know that there's not civilizations they just got to using radio? They just got there, and some they're still in their Bronze Age or their Roman eras. I mean, it's really small-minded to say, well, that's it, it's us. It's crazy.
Absolutely. Well, and that's only taking into consideration that what we're dealing with is from another planet. Just look at all the diversity within our own planet. To think that all of that only survives here, it's just insane at this point.
Right.
But even taking it another step, we're only looking at what's out in space. There are so many other things that could be playing into this phenomenon, which I believe that there's several different facets at play here. We could be seeing things from inner Earth, within our oceans that we have no idea actually exist here. We could see things that are coming in from other dimensions, or some people even believe that it could be time travelers or someone from the future coming back to visit us. So, I mean, there's so many different things that could account for the different craft and phenomena that we're seeing. It's only limiting to think of even just the vastness of space, which is mind blowing.
Right. And a lot of that comes from, and I'm not bashing. Some people accuse me of bashing religion. I'm not. I think religion's great. I think it spreads a really positive message until a radicalized person that's very charismatic gets the helm, right? Then it's a problem. But outside of that, and I know I have relatives that do this. They're like, no, God made here and there's nothing else. You know what I mean? And that they're steadfast on that, which, so be it. But at the end of the day, for me, especially for me and anyone else, when 2017 rolls around and the military videos are coming out and there's more coming out now, you can't deny it. I mean, I'm not saying I know what's driving. I have my theories, but you can't deny UFOs now. For you to do so, it's not just narrow-minded. You're just flat out, you're ignoring it. You're trying to look away from the problems. It's disrupting your belief system. And that could be a problem moving forward. But like you said, the younger generations, I think if aliens landed at the White House tomorrow, they'd be like, wow. And they're like, right, back to my game.
Absolutely. And I've had that shift in my mindset throughout my lifetime. I remember growing up thinking, wow, wouldn't it be neat if there was something out there? And you're probably around my age and grew up with the same kind of thinking where it was like, wow, that'd be so neat if we weren't the only ones. And then finally you get to the point where there's so much evidence that your mind shifts and you go, okay, there's definitely stuff out there. And it's kind of a wow moment. And then you're right back to life. Like we're still stuck on this spinning, globe out in the middle of space.
Yeah.
We can't go anywhere. We can't do anything about it. So, I mean, it's basically just a shift in the mindset, but I think that we're coming out of it. I think that a lot of this was put in place back in the 40s, back with, just prior to Project Blue Book with Project Grudge, and whenever they were trying to convince the populace that there's nothing to see here, we can explain all these UFOs and they're all able to be identified, nothing to see here, don't worry about it. And it's kind of a silly subject. And then we saw, Hollywood coming out with kind of silly stuff related to UFOs.
Right.
And just kind of, poking fun at the subject. And so it caught on. I mean, it took America by storm that everyone latched onto this idea like, oh, that, stupid sci-fi stuff, UFOs, it's silly. No one really believes in that. And it has stuck around and stuck around and stuck around, and I think that we're finally starting to turn the tides and people are going, okay, well, I'm not going to stick to that old script anymore because it's kind of outdated and it doesn't apply anymore.
Yeah. Ufology is the one thing in pop culture that has not altered since the 40s. It's the only thing that's consistent. I mean, if you look at like the trends of music, style, it's come and gone, it's changed. That's pretty much the same story from then till now. The only difference now is we have the evidence. We've always had good evidence from what I've been reading. I wouldn't have said this. I would not have said this a year ago, but now after all the research I've been doing, it's mind blowing how much evidence. And even now you have military videos, you have military personnel speaking about it, like Fravor. Come on. Like at some point, accept the fact that, all right, we don't know what they are. We are definitely here under observation. No question of that. I mean, we're easily the most interesting channel to watch in the Milky Way. God, we're entertaining. So, and
well, you got to consider with all of this mountain of evidence, here at MUFON within our own case management system, we have over 120,000 case reports. 120,000, and that's not even dating back to 1969 when MUFON was founded. This was just within the 2000s when our case management system came online. And so just even of those 120,000 cases, you only need one
Right.
Only one person needs to be telling the truth.
Right.
And it changes everything.
Well,
If one person is telling the truth, then that means it's real. And you can't tell me that you believe 120,000 people with the caliber of people that we get reports from, that they're all lying.
right. And, it's like court. You could go to court, present, exhibit A through Z. It only takes exhibit C to compel people, and it becomes fact. And then, whatever the fact, you're either convicted or let go, or whatever that fact may come to be. But the point is, it takes that one smoking gun, and then it's undeniable. And in my opinion, if you look at these military videos, this is for non-believers, by the way. When I say it's not for you or like other people that are like-minded, I mean for non-believers. Watch the military videos, and I forget this guy's name. He tried saying, it's a military craft, and don't try to debunk that, because you're insulting military personnel who's witnessed this, and they say that it's unidentifiable, and they're supernatural in the way they behave. So you're insulting those people by trying to debunk that. Don't try to sit there and say, if you look at it from this angle, stop it. These are the guys I'm like, how many jets have you flown behind? None. That's the answer. So just don't do it. So after that, I don't know, for non-believers, watch those videos and open your mind up and say this now. And after seeing those, like MUFON, 120,000 cases, people, I commend MUFON. Big organization, really diverse. People just want to know the facts. I've never encountered a MUFON member yet who tried to make something fantastic. They legitimately want answers. And to attest to that, you know how many cops are joining MUFON right now? It's a big number. Yeah. It's a big number.
Our Oklahoma team, actually everybody on my team is ex-law enforcement, except for me. So we have a fantastic team. And in fact, we've got 4 people that are trying to take the exam now, and the majority of them are law enforcement as well. So I am just blown away at the caliber of people that are joining up. And law enforcement and military are wonderful assets. And that's not to put down anybody else, because obviously I'm not military, I'm not law enforcement. Everyone has something to offer to MUFON and to the investigation process. But these guys, they know how to collect evidence. They know how to conduct an investigation. Right. And so there's things that I'm constantly learning from the guys on our team, and there's things that they're learning from me. And so it all works together. But these military guys and these law enforcement guys, they're just top notch.
Yeah. And so people understand, they're not going to MUFON for a paycheck. These are right. People that are going there because something has compelled them to research further. So when you have people of law enforcement, prior military background, and then, I imagine the numbers start going up after the last disclosure, if you want to call it that, from the military. And the numbers start going up because now you have professionals that want to go out there. They want the truth. They want the facts. Dan Spell, prime example, right? One of your colleagues from MUFON, former DOD. He wants the facts. He's like me. He's never really witnessed anything, but he digs and he puts the time in, right? And so that's what it comes to. If you walk around with your eyes closed, you're not going to see anything, right? So in other words, if you're complacent in your beliefs and you sit at your house and you watch TV and you're not looking up or you're not out there putting time in, you don't really get the right to throw sticks at it, right? Like, oh, it's fake. How do you do that from your house? You got to go look. And then, like there's these other people that, I said this before, aliens come here, that we start talking to them, and there's going to be this percentage of people like, nope, that's the devil. Pretty sure of it. It's going to take time. But the newer generations, as you said earlier, yeah, those are the pioneers of tomorrow. And they're going to be the ones more accepting. And things like, like race won't matter. Religion won't matter. Politics, I'm not even sure why that's still a thing. It's a Roman thing to do. I don't know why we haven't evolved. So for you and your research, what are you coming across out there so far, like case-wise, that's catching your attention?
Here in Oklahoma specifically?
Well, just overall, like I'm sure you're in the know, you're in MUFON. There's got to be cases or some sort of subject that's grabbing your attention.
Well, for me personally, I'm very interested in the cases that show a lot of overlap. And I know that in the past, MUFON has really focused more on the nuts and bolts of things. And that's one of the things that's really good about the law enforcement guys in our team. They really tend to focus on the nuts and bolts of things. And so that's what I was saying. They all kind of bring different sides of it. I bring more of a paranormal background, but I'm also a nurse. And
Right.
So I want evidence as well. I'm not going to just go off of, say so. Basically, I want to bring in some evidence as well. And typically here, whenever we conduct an investigation, we will go through, we do kind of just a preliminary online investigation that we'll walk through several different websites and different apps that we will check the position of the sun. Where was the moon at the time? Any kind of big astronomical objects that were in the sky. We'll check the location of transponding air traffic. We'll check where if there were any fireballs reported that night. And so we try to rule out everything that we can. Our basic idea is to recreate the night sky as it was at the time the witness saw something. So we'll even go into Google Earth and we'll go stand in the street where the witness was and look in that direction and see, oh, well, there's telephone lines right here, and sure enough, there's, a big conjunction there, and that's what they got a picture of. So we'll be able to rule out a good majority of things and be able to identify them. The ones that are left over, those are classified as either an unknown other or an unknown UAV. And the UAVs are the ones that show some kind of technology. They need to have like a row of lights, they're flashing sequentially or something like that.
Right.
And unknown other, those are my favorite. Those tend to be the orbs of light or, some kind of strange mist. Reality is transformed around these kind of things. And so there's a little bit difference there with unknown others. And so those are the ones that I really kind of lock in on. We've seen several here where there have been UFOs seen in conjunction. And this is going to sound crazy, but in conjunction with fairies, we've had several of them. And that's something that I was not prepared for. And I actually spoke with Margie Kay from up in Missouri, MUFON. She's the assistant state director up there. And she recently wrote a book about winged aliens. And one of the things she was seeing there in Missouri were these fairies. And this is actually in conjunction. I had a guy that was military that had seen two triangle-shaped craft. And then off to the side, there came into view a fairy-like being that was hovering pretty darn close to it. And he said he almost left that aspect out because he felt so silly including it. And I'm like, well, to me, that almost gives you more credibility here, because why would you already feel silly reporting a UFO. That's something that you're not comfortable with. Why on earth would you throw in, oh, and there was a fairy there too,
Right.
So,
yeah. I mean, listen, for that guy in that story, understand, we don't understand our technology. And when you're saying fairies to me, so here's what pops in my head. I think of nanotechnology. I think about what we're doing, right? Because there's literally programs you could watch where you're watching some of the best minds create little robots that when you say fairies, the first thing that pops in my head, they're in MIT, they're building these little dragonfly looking things for observation purposes, for recon, for video, whatever it may be. And that was 15 years ago. I watched a tech documentary. It could be practical application today. So then when you say fairy, who knows? I mean, that could be them scouting or recon. They could send that ahead of themselves. The thing is, we're saying fairy because from what we've read and what we learned through life, that's what we perceive. We don't know what it is. It could be their technology doing a recon work. So we say fairy because that we associate it with something we saw in a childhood movie or whatever it may be. But that could be a form of their technology. I always think about our applications. So when you're telling me it sounds crazy, it sounds practical when you're coming from a higher intelligence. If I had the ability to go observe and study the subjects of my study, use less energy, camera that could be almost undetectable in a heartbeat. In a heartbeat, I'd do that. You know, same with the bipedal out there. Like, well, why are there aliens always have head, 2 arms, and 2 legs? Isn't that a little consistent or whatever they said? Look, if it ain't broken, don't fix it. You know, if you look at the universe, the cosmic universe, right down from the cosmic web to the leaf on our planet, there's a very similar design. So again, if it's not broken, don't fix it. It seems to work universally. Leave it be. So, you know, and shout out to Margie K, by the way, on X Network, everybody. It's not the first time I heard this. I do a lot of off podcast interviews. I want to get you involved with that. These off podcast interviews, these like private interviews. Somebody still, like, there's a guy, and I keep bringing him up. I'm not going to say his name, but something. He's a skeptic, didn't believe it all. Wanted to do something, I think, to disprove his grandson. I'm pretty sure of that. But whatever happened, he's now on a 12-year study. This really long study. Something changed him. And he didn't go into great detail on it either. I'm begging to get him on the show. And eventually he will, hopefully. But there's a lot of these off podcast interviews. And when I hear you tell me this story and I hear from another complete stranger, it lines up. There's patterns, right? I mean, people have to accept that, what they're seeing. There's definitely patterns out there. So in your field work, how are you comfortable with getting out there and seeing these things? And like, how do you react if you see something?
Well, I actually had met up with a experiencer a couple of years ago. It was during the spring of 2020, and met up with him for a sky watch. And we had been there for, a couple of hours. It was me and 2 other MUFON investigators. There was a MUFON member, and then this gentleman and one of his friends. And so we had gone up on a hill out in around the Tulsa area up in northeastern Oklahoma. And we'd been there for a couple of hours, kind of saw a couple of lights that were like, I don't know, if it was anything or not. But he claimed to be a UFO magnet. And so we were waiting for him to attract the UFOs. And nothing really big happened. So we were like, well, let's go ahead and pack it in. It was about midnight. And so we were about to start heading down the hill. And he said, look up there. And so I look over to my left, and there is a low-hanging line off of a power line. And it's maybe, 10, 15, about 15 feet up, I'd say. And so this Sandhill Crane, I don't know if you've seen these things, they're enormous, flies in between the wires of this, of the power pole, and it swooped down to about 10 feet right above our heads, because we're all standing there with our gear. We were just about to head down this hill, and it swoops down right above us, and then it soars up about 80 feet away from us, and then just blinked out of existence.
Huh. Yeah.
And we all stood there and just gasped. Like, we were waiting for it to come back. Like, it took a minute for my brain to even process what I had just witnessed, because I was not ready to see an entire bird disappear. And this thing has like a 7-foot wingspan. This thing is enormous. This isn't like a small little bird. This is like a man-sized bird.
Yeah, we have cranes here in Florida. I forget the name of them. They're tall, gray with like a red patch on them, and they'll stare you down. They're not afraid of you at all. In fact, quite the opposite. They'll charge you. So I can imagine you seeing that at night. It's got an impact on you, right? So it's huge. But to disappear, damn.
Well, yes. And the gentleman had just been telling us just prior to this that he had a relationship with these cranes, that he's like, a lot of people in ufology have heard the association with owls that they call the Watchers, and they have an association with UFO sightings. He had said that he does not have a relationship with owls, but it's cranes. And then lo and behold, here comes this crane, and it I'm telling you, Adam, the thing disappeared.
Yes, I mean, if it's me, right? Now, here's how I go to what this is. How do I explain it? If it's me, and I'm really advanced in my technology, yeah, I could imagine utilizing something for what is easy for my subject to look at and I could get a close observation of what are they doing down there. We need close-ups on this, right? And then, I mean, you know, for any reason, people want to disbelieve. Look at our military applications and the ideas. I'm not kidding when I say this. There's literally a drone that looks like a bird that they use for recon. This thing flies over. It looks just like a hawk, I think it is. And you couldn't tell the difference while it's flying over. So now advance the technology 20-fold. They could use, I guess, basically a mirage in a sense, right? Like if you think what the orbs are, and the best way I could describe those is that's definitely a recon. It's because they seem to be intelligently maneuvered, right? But for the sake of you guys being out there and they're curious, yeah, I would use something that it looks like something familiar to you. I don't think you were supposed to watch it till it disappeared. I mean, they were probably like, well, oh, damn it, they saw that. You know, so like for me, if you and I are in the field together, we see something, and you know, to my audience and whoever listens, it's the last time you're going to see me, maybe, because I'm gonna run for it. I'm gonna go right to it, document on the way there. I gotta know. So it takes a good amount of discipline to document it and have your team. And I'm that rogue guy. I'm gonna run for it. So I gotta see that thing. I gotta grab it, and I'm gonna, like Travis Walton, I'm gonna pay a price for it, right? But that's what I would do.
Well, absolutely. That's what you got to do. Yeah. And, you know, I had only been an investigator for a few months at that point. I was expecting to see a light in the sky. You know, I was not expecting to see an entire bird disappear. But I would question my sanity if there weren't so many witnesses that saw the exact same thing there with me. And so it kind of set my tone immediately within MUFON, like, okay, just remember that anything can happen, you know, and listen to these witnesses because they're not making stuff up. You know, you can tell pretty quickly if someone's telling you a story, and that has not been the case. 99.99% of the time, these people are seeing things. And these things are real. They're happening, and people are still embarrassed to discuss them and still afraid of the ridicule.
Yeah, it's tough. Listen, again, to go back to the military videos and see how they perform at the larger scale. Now, scale down for things they're going to use for recon and observation. Make room for the idea that we don't understand the technology. There's technologies we have here on Earth that we made that's incomprehensible to humans. Like an example, not everyone knows how Wi-Fi, we know what Wi-Fi is. We don't understand really how it works, right? I mean, where's it travel? Like same with Bluetooth. Like we know what it is. We know how to use it. But now take Bluetooth or Wi-Fi just to the 80s and introduce that to someone back then. Even in the 80s, they're like, this guy's a witch. You know? That's how they're going to look at you. Like he's got to be a warlock. There's no way he's getting his phone and doing that, you know? So try to imagine again, it's really advanced and it can use things like holograms. Like personally, and I think I said it to you before, I think the actual gray alien themselves are holograms of themselves projected to wherever they want to go. Because the smaller grays they're advanced robots. And I think they rent those robots out to other life forms that are trying to observe us. Because again, we're their favorite channel. And they want to ruin it, right? I think maybe a month ago, someone asked me if we're going to be attacked. I'm like, I feel like they would have did it already, long ago. If they want to take over planet Earth and rule us, they would definitely not wait for us to be playing with nukes. So I'm on the ladder thinking, I think they could use holograms. I really believe that.
Well, I think that as far as the fear factor, I think a lot of that is just kind of programming again through Hollywood. We've been fed all of these fear movies, you know, fear the aliens, they're going to attack us and this and that. But that hasn't been the case. I mean, obviously they haven't attacked us yet, but whenever you talk to experiencers or abductees, they typically are not getting a message of fear, or they're not coming back scared of these aliens. They're coming back with stories of, You need to watch what you're doing to your planet. Right. You need to learn how to love each other. And we talked last time about the parallels between the near-death experiencers and the UFO experiencers. And that's one of the main things is both come back going, learn how to love humanity, love each other, and quit with this stupid crap. You got to quit with the war machine. That's why the aliens are coming and they're disabling the nukes and everything. We're going to do ourselves in. And we're getting warnings from every direction that we possibly can to stop it, learn how to get along.
Yeah. Our first episode, by the way, a friend of mine listened to it. And he was like, wow, that was a great message. I really enjoyed that episode. And, to that note, why wouldn't they want us to destroy this planet? I don't want people to get this idea that they just love humans. We're to study. They don't want to end the study. They're watching our evolution. Like for us, when we're watching a pride of lions, we're not allowed to get involved, right? But if we see some form of threat that's outside of the natural for them, that's where we get involved. Right? Don't let we're studying these creatures. They're here. Don't do this. It's going to kill them. Same for us. I still have a hard time understanding why why we don't like Russia. Russia don't like us, and China. And I can't wrap my head. It's just a big planet. You know what I mean? Like, you have your space, and I personally don't care what you believe. I like your culture. I like learning about your culture. I don't understand why we have differences and dislike. Maybe I'm naive, but I think it's foolish. And so part of the study for our observers will they evolve to the point where they behave like a species? And at said point, maybe we'll communicate directly instead of indirectly.
Absolutely.
I have to believe that.
Well, and Adam, to take it even a step further, again, going back to, this isn't necessarily all coming from outer space. If something is on world, if something is, say in our earth or living in our oceans, then of course they're going to be keeping an eye on what we're doing on land because they live here too. Right. Right. We don't know enough to know where they're coming from, but that would definitely, obviously, give them a vested interest in what we're doing here on land.
Yeah, you know what? I never really considered that. Because if you look at it, I said this, who did I speak? I spoke to Debbie Zegelmeyer about it. So I depict them coming from space. They're lowering themselves down. Because if you look, the Fravor, it goes from 80,000 foot to 1 foot, something is below the surface. So that's probably their system of transporting themselves to wherever it is that's below the waves or under the ground that they live in, right? But I never thought that there was something living here. And they're like, what are they doing up there? They're going to ruin everything. I never thought of that.
I actually spoke to an experiencer not too long ago who had been given a download message. And she was speaking about how they were upset about the sonar, the waves that the Navy was sending through the oceans, that it was disrupting something for them. And I can't speak much to the whole ocean theory. I know Debbie, she's fantastic. Yeah, she just came out with a book literally on it. And she's probably the leading expert in the US on it. But I would not write off that theory. That's not one that I've looked into deeply, but it's one that I always keep in my mind as a possibility of what's going on.
Yeah, if you listen to the episode with Debbie and myself, we get into I have this thing. I have theories, and I always pour it on you guys. I'm not going to get it on these people, right? Because you can't talk to the neighbor about it because he's like, yeah, I don't care, man. So, but it's we spoke at length at that, and by the end of my conversation with her, she had me thinking. Like I remember leaving that episode, I was like, holy shit, she's really. I got a lot to consider here, and I'm so busy thinking that we're being visited from just outside to not even consider the idea that they've been here and they're among us. Because even civilizations from years ago, long before history, were depicting things in the sky like this. So yeah, I never really considered that, and it gives me.
And if you look into, I don't know how much you've looked into Operation High Jump and what was going on with Admiral Byrd at that time. That was a really interesting period. That was right around Roswell. It was there 1947, 48, 49. Within those years, a lot of stuff was happening. And so at that time, I think it was 48, was whenever Admiral Byrd, he actually was working under Forrestal, had given him the go-ahead to make this expedition down to the Antarctic to set up like a research base or something down there. And they took like 4,000 men with them. And this is when, the Nazis had supposedly run off and had taken off down to Antarctica. And so Admiral Byrd goes down there and he ends up flying into a hole in the earth. And he said that these round ships were flying out of it at him and attacking. And he actually gave a interview afterwards saying that we need to pay attention to the threat that could be coming from the poles, and that there were vehicles that could travel pole to pole within an instant. And so shortly after that, that's whenever Roswell happened and Forrestal was in there. And then of course, Forrestal fell out of a 16-story building to his death shortly after that.
What? Like, was that not looked into further? Because, that's crazy. So there's no way he jumped.
We don't know. We don't know. They had checked him into a mental institution. And obviously that he had gone from being Secretary of the Navy and then directly appointed he was the first Secretary of Defense.
Huh. This is sounding very familiar. Because the more I dig and research, I find these cases that for whatever reason are not all over documentaries or news related. A lot of these people that are in the know, ufology, die mysteriously when it seems like they're getting closer to the facts, right?
Right.
I mean, there's this guy, I was talking to Doug Wilson, and Doug Wilson's like, "Yeah, just leave it alone, Adam." But I'm looking for him, Richard Doty. I want to find this guy. I want to have a chat. I want to have a conversation with him. And I've had people in life say, "Look, man, just leave that alone." No, I'm going to talk to this guy. Like, I didn't even know about him till recently. I was watching a documentary and he was on it, and there was, a lot of ufologists on it. And here's this guy smiling, and he's got deception written on his face. Like, let's be, he was smiling at that camera as he was talking about giving misinformation to people and basically ruining people's lives. But I never heard anyone ask a line of questions that I would ask, which makes me wonder, is there a narrative you got to speak to with him? Or, I don't know. I want to try, I'm tracking him down one way or the other. He has no real contacts, like even on IMDb, it's no real email or number to call. So I'm going to start calling in some favors. So I got to find this guy. You know what I mean? I'm going to track him down. I don't care how I do it, but I need to get him. He's one of the people. So the reason I moved to that is I keep hearing these cases where people just die in car accidents or just the most insane ways to die. And I don't know why it's not being spoken about widely. Have you looked into any of that?
I try not to.
Yeah, I don't blame you. Yeah. let me handle that part. I'm a little more aggressive.
Yeah, that's for you, Adam. I know that it takes place. I think it took place more back in the day. Which anyways, that's what I want to believe, and that's where I'm going to leave that. Yeah. But I've already been to the other side once, and whenever I go, I hope I'm old and gray before I visit that place again. But I know that there has been deaths tied to the UFO topic. And like I said, Forrestal, that was the one that really kind of caught my attention. And it was said that he was wanting to tell the public about UFOs. Huh. But if you look at it in that sense, it makes sense to me why the government would keep it quiet. If there is something living in, inner Earth at the poles, every redneck's going to have their guns trying to, get down to, I don't know if we can trust humanity with that information. Not then, especially not then, right? That's still a God-fearing America. Today, a little different. We're a little more accepting. And I think I even said it to you.
I think they're going to pick up the pace on disclosure because, look, they just sent William Shatner to space. And so the government's got to, they're probably like, holy shit, they're sending celebrities up. And if celebrities go to their cameras and they see something, they're not going to be quiet about it. You know, you're not going to suppress Jeff Bezos because that guy in his mind, that's found my new TV show, right? Yeah. So I think, you know, moving forward, I think we're going to be, I think disclosure, full disclosure, I predict within the next decade. I think we're going to have to, because especially now, I just recently learned that the Vatican and Catholicism are utilizing telescopes. When I heard this, like, what? So they're making room for the idea that something else is there. And of course, they're going to either adopt them or they're going to, you know, well, I don't know, I guess recruit them. But, you know, if they're going to that length, then we're not far away. It's some of the other cultures and religions that are going to have some pushback. But, you know, again, you're sending private industry to space with celebrities. How much longer can you possibly suppress if they see anything at that point? Not to speak what you're saying about the poll. I'm going to look more into that. I haven't studied much of it. I'm going to look way more into that. Like our moon. What do you know about our moon, Mindy? What have you heard about it?
About what?
Our moon.
Oh, what about it?
Somebody hit me with something I wasn't prepared for. Our moon, this is what I'm told anyway, is the only moon in our solar system that has the size and relevance, you know, to our planet. You know, it's larger than that, and it's exact. It's almost like it was placed there, put on a timer. Like it's almost engineered to go around our planet the way it does. It's the way it interacts with our sun, as far as you could predict the eclipses to the T. So when I heard that, and then I hear, you know, other theories about something living here, maybe in the water that's more advanced, and then hearing about the moon being like one of the Buzz Aldrin and some of the other astronauts said they'd have like moonquakes that would last like hours, and it's like a ring, like a bell. And in my mind, I'm like, the moon's not solid. I was like shocked. So that sounds constructed. Is there any theories floating around MUFON with that?
Not necessarily. I mean, I've heard what you're speaking about. And especially my husband is a Southern Baptist preacher, or he was back in the day. And so I've heard that in relation to the Bible, you know, as far as the moon is the exact size that it has to be to bring in the tides, and it, you know, is the exact distance that it has to be to make a complete eclipse. Yeah. And yes. And so all these things are lined up astronomically, you know, against the odds for life to have sprung up on the planet and all of that. And so I know a little bit about what you're saying. I've heard the theories that, you know, the moon had been dragged into place. But that's about as much as I know about it. Yeah.
I mean, when I heard this and this person told me about it, and I looked it up and I watched a couple of documentaries, by the end it's like, get out of here, man. I looked at every moon in our solar system, and lo and behold, true. They're either, well, for the most part, they're all smaller, and none of them are in exact orbit. They're like these whipping orbits. Our moon's the only one that's, it looks like it's by design. You know, like an architect did that. And that, even now, still has my attention. I'm trying to find someone who's an expert on the moon, right? Because I need to hear from this person, right? So then you go to your mind, the back of your mind, about this whole dark side of the moon. One side always faces us. So the dark side is a complete mystery to regular observers. Could there be a base on the other side? Could there be something on the other side? When I hear about it being hollow, I ask questions like, why the hell would it be hollow? And how would that happen? And so now this new rabbit hole has begun for me, Mindy. So I don't know.
I've seen pictures of other planets that supposedly have holes at their poles as well. And you think of like gas giants and everything.
Yeah.
In fact, I was watching something the other day, and it was talking about the way that planets spin. And you think of like a centrifuge or something, everything's going to be flung to the outer portions. And so it makes sense that it would be hollow. I don't know enough about it. I'm not a geologist or anything like that, but you know, I could just tell you what I've heard. But it's an interesting thought.
It's got my attention because then it drew me to some of the moons of Saturn and Jupiter, like Saturn in particular. I think we're going to find life here in our solar system. I just don't think we looked for it correctly. It's not going to be intelligent, or maybe it would. Who knows? But the idea that one of these planets has geysers and it's water and there's and like, these are moons, right? And then you look how they behave around their parent planet. It's not like ours at all. Our moon is so inactive compared to every other moon out there. So again, watching this, and then I hear from these same people, consider the moon. I said this and didn't realize it for us though, that the moon should be a proving ground. We should go to the moon and launch from there from Mars. There's less resistance. It's more efficient for fuel, et cetera, et cetera. Never dawned on me that it's already been a proving ground for something else. So I never considered that. He brought another good point. Where's the moon positioned during the Fravor thing? And I don't know this yet. I'm going to look into it. But during the Fravor and the incident with that, where was the moon in relation to that happening? I don't know. I never considered that either. So there's things I have to look at now. It's blowing my mind, Mindy.
Well, and again, if you want to take it a step further, I mean, we've talked about inner Earth. We've talked about the oceans. We've talked about outer space. And so time travel, again, that's, I have no idea about time travel. Some people say it's possible. Some people say it's not. I don't know. And then finally, the last one would be the interdimensional, which that's the one that I really focus on more, just because I encountered other entities on the other side. And so for me, I almost look at it as the source reality, that is where these entities are coming from, that anybody in this reality almost has to don a suit to exist here. And so there's different things popping in all the time. And so there's different layers, I think, to these different phenomena. It doesn't have to be one or the other. It can be any kind of combination of what we're seeing.
I agree, because when you talk about the paranormal, and I spoke about it just last night with Dr. John V. I literally just spoke about this. Kind of weird. Imagine there's a hot spot on the planet where the activities around, like, Skinwalker, right? There's something in the geology there that makes it, where you can connect with that other dimension. Now, how do we know that we're not going to these haunted houses because we're hearing things and we're like, hey, are you there? Meanwhile, we're scaring the hell out of whatever's on the other side, right? Because I saw this documentary where the voice came to their EVP and it's like, leave us alone. I'm like, whoa, wait a minute. So watching this documentary, I'm like, are we scaring them? Like, just imagine there's someone in their living room. We're over there yelling at them, right?
Well, it's fascinating because I came from a ghost hunting background back in my early 20s, like way back in the day. That's kind of what I started with, because I grew up in a house that was haunted terribly by shadow people. And that's actually why I met my husband, because I had so many questions. I did not understand why I was getting tormented by this shadow person, and why he was like stuck at our home. And it was almost every night. It was horrendous, Adam. I would lay there, and I was 20 years old, and I would still lay there and cry myself to sleep. I was working as an ICU nurse, and I would come home exhausted, and I would be dealing with the shadow person. And so that's how I ended up meeting my husband, because I wanted Christian answers to things, because right. I could not find it myself. And I was like, it didn't seem like a demon, but it gave off a horrendous feeling, and it scared the crap out of me. And so that kind of kicked off my whole search for answers. But I think that it's interesting that there is this thread from the paranormal into ufology, where time and again, we have these UFO experiencers who have a UFO encounter, and then they start having poltergeist activity at their house. They'll have these lighted orbs flying through. They'll have shadow people. They'll have ghosts. They'll have some of their loved ones will come and visit. Their deceased loved ones will come and visit. And it's just this kind of mixed bag of activity that happens afterwards. And I even experienced that myself with the near-death experience, where things really kind of kicked up. And so it's fascinating to me that all of these tend to intertwine on some level.
Right. You know, when you think about what a UFO has to do to move, it's manipulating matter around it in a way that's not natural. Not natural, but we don't know how to do it, right? So are they opening portals? Are they opening gateways? By them visiting these people, the experiencers, are they opening doorways that they don't intend to open, right? You're manipulating some form of energy that's so concentrated that who knows the after effect of that, right? So maybe a light was cast on the other side that these shadow people saw, and they're curious, and they came to see it. You know, someone else told me once too, and I read this. If you make yourself aware, and they're aware that you're aware, well, then you open Pandora's box, right? Because now they're interested in you. So these things that scared you, who knows what their intention was, right? Maybe because I can't remember the movie, but they're hollering at you, but it could be something benign that they're saying, but they're just manipulating energy. So it sounds horrifying and it feels horrifying, right? Some of the paranormal people, they tell me they get these marks in their arms and whatever else. And I'm like, you know, whether they want to touch you for pleasure or to administer pain, both cases, they have to manipulate energy to do it. It's not going to feel good. So I don't know. It's tough.
No, I think that you're onto something there, because just like you had mentioned Skinwalker before, I think that kind of energy isn't necessarily, sometimes it's connected to places, but sometimes it's also connected to people. And so there are some experiencers that I've spoken with that they will have their encounter, and then, you know, they'll encounter Bigfoot even afterwards.
Right.
Or, you know, and it's just all these strange things that tend to follow them. I know that over in eastern Oklahoma, that is just hotbed. That area is just so strange. It's kind of in the foothills of the Ozarks, and it's right through the Kiamichi Mountains. And they actually have a Bigfoot festival down there every year at Honubby. And I had gotten a call from a gentleman last year that actually was out in Honubby, where the Bigfoot are seen all the time. And there's also spook lights seen in that area. And he actually encountered a UFO amongst this backdrop. And so, you know, ended up speaking to him about it, and come to find out he had also had a winged being encounter a couple of years prior. And so I always keep my eye on eastern Oklahoma. In fact, there is a case, it may be one of the top cases for this last year, that'll be presented at the symposium this year. Maybe. It's in the running. But it was a fantastic case from the 70s out in eastern Oklahoma, and it was at a boarding school. And there were actually 15 different witnesses that saw this UFO as it approached over an hour. And all of these were school-age kids that were out there running around. They were watching it. And it got just about 60 feet overhead and about 100, 200 feet away from them. There were two adults there that were present. And one was the teacher. And they, you know, the kids were hollering and excited. And they said, you know, come out here. There's something happening. And so they came out and they stood there and they watched this thing. And it kind of hovered over a grove of trees. And it started freaking them out. It's because it started going from daytime to nighttime. Like it had taken over an hour, 2 hours, 3 hours, somewhere in that time frame, for this thing to hover and go over this grove of trees. So the oldest boy, he was about 15 or so, he ran into the house and he grabbed his rifle, because this is kind of like just like a family that ran this boarding school. And so the oldest boy, he was 15, went in, got his rifle. And whenever he ran back out, the UFO tilted up onto its side and it took off towards the sawmill that was on their property, quite a bit back. So he climbs up on top of the roof of the schoolhouse and he's watching, and with his gun. And one of the witnesses said there was another boy up there. One said it was just him. But anyways, they climbed up there and they watched, and they said that it kind of landed in a clearing. Well, the adults got nervous. They said, let's get the kids inside. And so they got them in, and there were several kids that were hiding under their beds, and they were trying to get them out. And kids were screaming. They were saying that they were seeing entities or beings at the windows, and they couldn't even describe their faces. They said they kept changing. And so the oldest boy, he kind of stood guard all night with his rifle. He started boarding up the windows and doors and stood guard until the teacher said that you could hear a change in the environment, like the sound of the animals came back, and then everything just quit.
Huh.
So that next morning, and it's strange because some of the kids think, they've told me that they remember it just quitting. Yeah, they went in and they had a normal evening. Some of the kids remember being frightened and hiding under the beds and the whole commotion that was going on. Some of the kids remember the oldest boy walking around with the gun. And that's what the teacher remembers as well. But the teacher went on to say that the next day they went out and took a field trip, with the oldest kids. And they went up to look for any signs of the UFO, and they didn't find anything. But on the way back, they checked the meat locker that was outside, and it had 2 sides of beef in it. And whenever they checked it, it was empty. And so they didn't know what happened to the meat. They informed the owner of the school about this. And that next day, they found that the meat had been returned, and they don't know how that happened. So the owner had said, we're not letting you eat that, haul it out into the middle of this field and go burn it. And we'll get something, else for you guys to eat. The teacher also said that she remembers men in black coming and speaking to the owner and his wife and confiscating the wife's camera. And within that year, they shut down the school and sent all of the kids back to their families.
Damn. Steve Murr and I talked about this. If you haven't heard that episode, it was the more recent one with Stephen Murr.
I have not.
He's a parapsychologist. He's that guy's research is pretty on point. And we were discussing frequencies and vibrations and what we like when you see UFOs and you're seeing these amazing colors, it's because they're vibrating at a frequency that's so great that the air around it's reacting to it, right? So that being said, when you're doing these things, and from what these people went through, and then you're seeing like even the beings around, when you use high frequencies, you don't know what you're doing to our plane of existence. An example, if you get a piece of metal and you put sand on it and you get like a sound wave at 432 hertz and you pump it through this, almost every time it's going to come out to the shape of a triangle. It's I'm not going to say it's mysterious. I've watched videos, they do this. And other frequencies, you get different shapes that are geometric, right? They look like mathematical, like a math equation, right? So when you're using these frequencies, what are you doing to the environment around you, the geology? And could you open, there's already speculation that we could use high frequencies to open, wormholes. This is being discussed, when you look at what a wormhole is, and that's what, to your answer your question earlier about time travel, and this is theory, but if you go through a wormhole, who knows, and you come right back here, like we don't know what happens really when we go through a wormhole. We just know it's great gravity and not even like it, escape it. If it go through it, will he kill you? I don't know. What if you go right through it, but then it's you fly your ship through it, and then it's 1938. You know what I mean? Like we don't know how that's going to behave. So all these things being said, if you were to manipulate frequencies here on Earth, are you opening small gateways, small wormholes, small portals like that? You can't dismiss any of these things. There's sciences out there that we don't understand. And a lot of things that we used to call nonsense is science today.
No, absolutely. With the hertz, you're onto something. With the 432 hertz, I'll tell you what's interesting about that is after I had my aneurysm, it took 2 years before I actually got a doctor to run the test and find the enormous rips in my artery. But in the meantime, I had gone deaf and I was not getting the medical treatment I needed. And so I had literally looked up on YouTube, sounds to help with, ringing in the ears, or
Right.
sounds to help with deafness. And I came across 432 hertz music. I had never heard of it before. And it wasn't something that I was interested in, because before the NDE, I was a very strict Baptist. And so anything to do with meditation or anything, we stayed away from.
Right.
And so when I found the 432 hertz, it was immediate, Adam. I felt that in my soul. It was the same vibration that I got from being in the presence of the fabric of humanity that I saw during my near-death experience. And it's not something I heard while I was there, but it was the feeling from it. And as soon as I heard that 432 hertz, I pull it up every day on YouTube and just play it on my TV throughout my house. So it's almost the only thing that I listen to anymore. And that's common for near-death experiencers, where we don't necessarily like music anymore. We like nature sounds, and we like, hertz music.
Well, here's the thing, by the way, Mindy, you could listen to your music in 432 hertz, whatever music you want.
Oh, I've seen that.
Yeah. So here's a fun fact. I discovered this after just prior to speaking with Steve, and we spoke at length. At some point, everything was 432 hertz. We adjusted it to 440 hertz at some point, I think in the 50s. Mm-hmm. And it turns out 440 hertz makes us more susceptible to fear, to control. And so when you're watching,
isn't that amazing?
Yeah, when you're watching TV and you're hearing the news and you're having these fear feelings. Listen, you watch the news at 432 hertz with some piano in the background, and whatever you're watching is not going to impact you the same way. It is soothing. And Tesla said this. Nikola Tesla said that everything, the vibrations of our planet, our species, us, all animals, even it's all at 432 hertz. That's why it's calming. It's natural. It's our natural state. And I didn't know any of this. I only started looking at hertz and vibrations and frequencies because I was laying in bed thinking, I think that the UFOs light up the way they do is because they're using a high frequency and they're vibrating. And that came from the evolution of talking to Roberta Grimes about the afterlife and how everything operates at a frequency and a vibration. And so all these things connected. And I started doing this research, and that's when I came across this. So when you're doing 432 hertz, you're putting your body at its natural state, and you're relaxing.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, and have you heard of? Have you ever seen anything about the water experiment that the Dr. Emoto, I believe, had done an experiment where he spoke kind things to water and spoke horrible things to water, and then took pictures of them under a telescope. And the ones that the vibrations of the positive made beautiful crystals and everything. And the ones he spoke toxic things to, they look like they're decaying. It's amazing how much, our words and speaking kindness to others can really change the vibrations of things and affect each other. And I think that that's really one of the main things that we need to, get back to. Again, it comes back to, being kind to one another and learn how to get along. Right. I don't think that we are going to see us getting technologies from whoever is flying these craft until we can learn that simple thing. It seems so simple, but until we can grasp that and really perfect it, we don't have any business having these technologies until we can prove that we are capable of handling it.
Well, yeah. I mean, everything in technology starts at military applications and how we could use it to, we say, protect ourselves. But the real way to say is, how do we obliterate the opponent? And that's the truth. Like GPS, internet, that was all military applications long before we had it in our homes. And they were not there to do anything other than communicate for the idea of war. So I agree. Till we behave like a species, we have no shot. There's not, we wouldn't do it. If we went to a planet tomorrow, if a group of our scientists went to a planet and they found a species there and they were barbaric and just wrecking each other, We're like, well, or I guess we'll just watch this one unfold, because we're not going to get involved. It makes no sense, right? I have this thing I say where if you want a race, human. If you want a religion, humanity. And if you want a place of origin to call home, Earth. It should be that easy. It really should be, but it's not. I don't know why, but hopefully, Mindy, within the next decade, I've spoken to a few people, we get past this. And even then, we have bigger hurdles, right? We got to, not just about Americans getting along, but just the planet all over. We got to get these differences out. Like, there's no way we're going to go to be interstellar with these kind of mindsets. It's not going to happen, because even when we get out there, an example, what's currency when we're in space? It's not money. It's not gold. Gold at the end of the day is it's good for conducting electricity. It's pretty to look at. You cannot eat it. You cannot drink it. If society crashed tomorrow, money would mean very little. The richest people on the planet will be the farmers and the people, whoever has the water and the ammo, right? That's it. It comes to that. I hate to say it, but food, ammo, water. That's the power of the planet at that point. So farmers would be the billionaires, because gold, worthless. You can't trade. If you go to a farmer in a post-apocalyptic world, it's like, here, I got this gold. Can I have some food? The farmer's gonna look at you like, what the hell am I gonna do with that gold? I can't eat or drink it. It's not gonna soil it's not gonna make the soil fertile. It's worthless. So it's tough, Mindy. It's tough, because we're a people of necessity and identity, and it's to do what these beings have done, that they're here, they're observing us, was greater than them. It was bigger than themselves to do it, to make this observation, to make this study. They're not viewing each other as independents to do this. And until we get to that mindset, well, I guess we're at the pause mark, right?
Yeah. And I think that we're getting there. Hopefully we're getting better. I see positive signs in each generation that we're learning from our past, and hopefully we can stop repeating the things that haven't worked for us, and start working towards a better community and better future.
Yep. I say this with the law enforcement people too. It starts in the community, right? There's there's community leaders that stand up like, oh, law enforcement, we need to, they take their funds away. What are you talking about? You're responsible for developing those connections. And, that can be spoken to everyone, and you're right. Community starts there, or at least we hope to anyway. Mindy, before we close, is there anything you want to add?
I don't know. We've covered a lot.
We sure did. And we're definitely going to do it again. I always enjoy talking to you. I'm going to introduce some cases to you. We'll talk. In fact, we'll speak post podcast. I got some cases. I'm not going to speak about them yet. I'm going to give these people their time to research it. For those people that are calling me for the off podcast interviews, please speed up the pace. I'm really excited. But in that case, Mindy, I had a great time speaking with you.
Yes, you too, Adam. I always enjoy it. And I thank you so much for having me.
Indeed. Thank you for being on, Mindy. We'll talk again.